Hiya, good morning, guys. Welcome to my Compound Life. I am Jonathan. This is a channel where we build assets, we build habits, and of course, we build freedom that will be financial freedom, time freedom for you, me, and anyone else that watches my video. So, if you're new, welcome. If you're old and you're a loyal viewer, please start hitting the like right now. Okay, I'm a new content creator. I create video almost on a daily basis. For now, it's really always focusing on Bitcoin. So I do daily Bitcoin update, and along with any other educational Bitcoin related videos. So don't miss out. So hit subscribe and let me know who you are in the comment section. It's always good to hear from viewers, and at the same time know where you guys come from, right? So let me know in the comment section. Okay, so let's start. Happy Friday, everyone. As of time of recording, right now it's the Friday 23rd of January 2026, around 9:30 a.m. in the morning in the UK. Right now, Bitcoin price is around $89,000. Bitcoin has been trading around $89,000 to about $89,500 in the past 24 hours. It dipped a modest 0.5%, kicking off from roughly 90,000, touching a peak close to 90,500 and bottoming out near 88,600. So we're still sitting about 29% below the previous all-time high of around 126,000. That was last year, back in early October. So what you are seeing right now on the chart, it's a 4 hours chart. It's there's clearly loss of momentum from the last impulse. Okay, so this was the last impulse. You know, we had a strong impulsive move up into the 96, 97 kind of range. Yeah, 96, 97 kind of range area. This push failed. That push failed to follow through. Kind of like a classic lower high structure afterwards. Since then, price has been respecting the short-term moving average. That's the downside movement blue line. Okay, which tells us momentum traders are not stepping in aggressively yet. I think this isn't panic. It's much more of a cooling. Okay, so cast your eyes specifically on the purple zone here that I've drawn. Right now, the purple zone definitely matters. Okay, so this zone, it's around 88,000, 86 high to about 90,500. Okay, so this was prior resistance around here. Okay. Then flip to support. Okay, so we are now hoping we'll consolidate and eventually turn this to a support, right? At present, this remains a key resistance. And then, we're chopping inside. It usually means a few things when we're chopping inside, right? The market is deciding whether this is reaccumulation or distribution. Right now, for the time being, it's still undecided. So it's not fully broken. It simply means it's undecided, right? And looking at the volume, it did spike a little bit. Emotional selling, not really trend confirmation per se, right? So big red candles into the zone, volume spikes after price already fell. So that typically means these are late sellers, weak hands exiting, stop leverage getting cleared. And quite an important thing to highlight, if these were the start of a real bear trend, you want to see some expanding volume follow through, lower, not just one sharp kind of flush and then chop. So far, it does seem it's a continuation of chop solidation for the Bitcoin price. So are we heading into a bull or bear market? Because I kept asking that question myself. It's neither confirmed. This looks like a transition or type of like a reset phase, right? But likely scenario from now until maybe later part of next week, we're going to stay in this range. This is kind of like a reaccumulation range where price holds around 88 to about 90,000. Sideways chops. I know it's frustrating just going through more and more sideways chops. But sideways chops is actually a good thing. It's because, once we start to see smaller candle, it essentially hint there will be a breakout coming. Okay. And of course, the breakout doesn't mean it will go higher. It can always go lower, but we will see, right? So everything are sideways chops now and waiting for the momentum to reset. Yeah, so this is kind of, we kind of essentially going through a boredom phase. And essentially all of this bottom phase usually just try and shake out any leverage. So if you leverage traders out there, be careful. I think it's not the best time to leverage long or short. They'll easily be taken out by the market makers or by the exchanges. And remember that, right? Market makers, exchanges, they need to make money, right? In this type of period where there will be very, very limited spot trading activities, right? And constantly there will be more macro news, there will be Trump news, there will be negative or positive news that comes out. That will be the time where market makers will try and hunt you guys down, right? If you guys on leverage. So don't go on crazy leverage where possible. Okay, but one thing that I still want to remind all of you guys, it's this chart, right? So if this is the first time you watch my video, I just want to reiterate again. So how do you look at this chart, right? This chart kind of measure Bitcoin from its low to low, okay? And pay specifically on this white line here. So this white line here essentially indicates the current progress, where, obviously Bitcoin did its low period, and then followed by, a bullish few years. And then it reaches its all-time high, which was sometime in October last year at $126,000 Bitcoin, right? And then now it's progressing lower, right? So if we look at the previous two cycle, this cycle indicated by the purple line as well as the orange line, so that's the time frame of the cycle. It's 2015 to 2018 for the orange line. For the purple line, it's 2018 to 2022, right? So historical trend indicates that after when Bitcoin hits the all-time high, that's in this range, that's highlighted in the gray out area, it will take approximately 1 year for Bitcoin to get to the low, right? That's the all-time low. That's the bottom of the Bitcoin, right? So you can see for the past 2 cycles, it's similar trend where Bitcoin takes about a year to get to its bottom. Okay, so when exactly will be the bottom, right? So it will be sometime in November this year. So last year we hit the top at 126k around October the 8th. So presumably Bitcoin will get to its bottom sometime this year too, right? So realistically, we'll need to ask this question ourselves, right? Does the 4-year cycle still exist? Do we still follow through the 4-year cycle? Looking at the trends right now, guys, do you guys still think, we can still go up, right? So my gut feel might be we may get some bounce or a dead cat bounce, but the likelihood now is, the closer we get to, this area, right, that marks the bottom of the Bitcoin, the closer we get there, that means the dead cat bounce will be lower, right? Because previously, if we were here, the dead cat bounce should be about $110,000, right? But now that we're trending lower and lower and lower, right, 89,000, maybe the dead cat bounce at max we might get to might be about 92,000, right? So there will always be some sort of bounces, right, before it goes even lower, right? And this is something that I need you guys to be aware of. So that when you guys do decide on leverages that you want to take on, or okay, let's not talk about leverage. I don't really talk about leverage here. So if you guys do want to decide on DCAing in more on a steroid, right? When Bitcoin is at the bottom, right? That will start sometime in November. And then you have, and if we look through, so this marks the bottom to the bottom, right? So the yellow line bottom followed by the purple line kind of next cycle bottom, right? So what you want to do is to make sure that you actually, when Bitcoin hits the bottom here, you want to start to reaccumulate, and you have approximately a good year to accumulate Bitcoin at the cheapest possible price. And then after that 1 year, you will have about 3 years worth of Bitcoin bull market. So, if you're existing viewer, I talk about this all the time. So this is just me trying to be sensible, protect our capital a little bit, just so that, whomever follow my compound life type of practice where we have a swing back as well as hodl back. Hodl back, we just hodl forever and ever and never ever sell. Whereas a swing back, essentially, we will try to buy low. That's when we get somewhere here, and then buy low and accumulate for about a year. And then you can, of course, continue to DCA during the high, right? Maybe less DCA, you can, you can use your money somewhere else, right? But anyway, that's how I'm doing things. So I'm just being transparent and letting you guys know how I would do it. Anyway, let's move on to fear and greed index. At the time of recording, we are at fear zone at 25. My chart's not loading. At 25, I think we were also at fear zone. Oh, we improved now at 30. But anyway, I think we will continue to be moving towards a fear zone due to recent Trump news. I think everything is now like fine now. Everything are improving. However, I simply don't see much market catalyst right now. There are a few which I'll cover in the news section, but insignificant enough to push the price higher. Okay, so that's what you guys need to be aware of. Okay, let's quickly look at ETF performance yesterday. Bitcoin ETF yesterday, let me just refresh. Okay, yesterday it was a very, very small outflow, very small indeed, $32 million worth of outflow, which is good, right? Which essentially means market are accepting about the Trump and Greenland European tariffs issue, and then things are now settling. And at the same time, the Japanese bond yield resulting into the Japanese carry trade unwind, I think that's also settling. So it does seem maybe there will be continue to have some sell-off, but not as big of a sell-off, and then eventually shifting back to more inflow, more positive inflow. Okay, so from a weekly perspective, I think for weekly, it's bearish for Bitcoin at about 1.22 billion so far this week worth of outflow. Monthly basis, hopefully we should turn positive soon, but we'll see tomorrow's data to determine, it will be positive. And for Ethereum, let me see, refresh Ethereum, again, small sell off, mainly from BlackRock and Bitwise. Total of $42 million outflow for Ethereum. As a result, I think on a weekly perspective so far, Ethereum 4 days worth of majority outflow for Ethereum. Okay, about 569 million worth of outflow. And for the month of January, I think it was positive for Ethereum at around 15 million worth of inflow in total for the month of January. I think that's a good recovery, especially comparing Ethereum in December last year as well as November. For December, it was $616 million worth of outflow, followed by November last year, it was $1.2 billion worth of outflow. Okay, so Ethereum getting more positive. And of course, looking at Solana, sold ETF, again, continue to do well, but very, very, very minimal type of inflow, mainly from Bitwise at $1.7 million worth of inflow. And monthly wise, I think it's good, recovering, but it's not huge. It's not huge. Even for weekly, so far it's about 7.7 million worth of inflow. Compared to last week, it was 46 million inflow. To this week, it's just 7.7. Maybe we'll push it to 8 or 9 million. So very, very, very minimal. So you can kind of sense and see and feel the overall sentiment on Bitcoin and crypto overall are just simply not there. Okay, so a lot of eyes are still, a lot of investors probably still on the sideline. Some of them probably think that, we're already at the top. We just hold cash right now and continue to buy at the bottom later on when the market crash. Whereas others are just flocking in to continue to buy gold and silver, right? That's the market situation right now. Okay, so let's move on to news that moves Bitcoin price section. One thing I want to cover is, okay, so the PCE and core PCE data came out. It hit expectation at 0.2%. So give you guys a bit of background, PCE is the Fed's preferred inflation gauge, tracking price changes in goods, services that American buys, okay? Only American buys, okay? So think of grocery, rent, healthcare, yada, yada, yada. Okay, so core strips out volatile food or energy for a clearer trend. So this data covers only for November, so delayed release, which actual was around 0.2% monthly, matching forecast year over year at 2.8%, which is up slightly from 2.7%. Okay, so of course, no big surprises for these data, but paired with stronger GDP at 4.4% versus expected 4.3% for quarter three last year, it paints a resilient economy, US economy, without too overheating, right? So I think these data are pretty important because it gives indication like Bitcoin asset holders that stable inflation signals Fed can cut rates without worry, and hopefully boosting some liquidity, bring back some liquidity back into Bitcoin and crypto, guys. Right? Jerome Powell just hit rate cut, right? Come on, do it. Please do it for the sake of Bitcoin and crypto bros, okay? Other news. Bitcoin profit cycle turns negative, right? For the first time since 2023, right? So background, give you guys some background. What the hell does this mean? Crypto Quant tracks realized profits or losses over 30 days, right? So holders just book net losses for the first time since October 2023. And usually when this kind of things happen, it essentially means people might be leaving Bitcoin, okay? So obviously Bitcoin's down 1% to about 89,700, equating to 6.18 billion in losses. So this signals tourists, short-term holders, they are selling at a loss amid of weakness. Okay, so for holders, it's a test of conviction. Whomever in Bitcoin, whomever the DCA gang, I'm talking about you guys, the DCA gang, and me, we are all the hardcore holders that shows a lot of conviction, right? So nothing for us to worry about. But for the tourists that came in, I'm sure they came in at around $100,000+ per Bitcoin. These are the individual that are hugely affected and they are deciding to leave. Okay. It can go both ways. It can be an indication that maybe people are leaving, and then we will continue with our bearish scenario, bearish trends. However, from this report from Crypto Quant, historically it also shows during these phases, it will often lead to a rebound. Okay, so we'll see how it goes. So yeah, I think as long as you're on DCA or pound cost average, it's ideal for you guys. It's always an opportunity for us to reduce our average. So fundamentally, I think it's still strong, but just some headwinds for the short term. Okay, and of course, other news. Gold, always about gold. Gold surges to doorsteps of $5,000 as experts debate Bitcoin's underperformance. Okay. Right, so gold hit near near 5,000. I think, everyone just have little faith onto their currency. Everyone's trying to hedge against that. And of course, Bitcoin, we all know the fact that when gold goes up, Bitcoin goes down sometime, and then eventually Bitcoin will catch us on. But however, from how media are depicting this, because media-wise, they always think of Bitcoin as the new digital gold, right? Store of value. So that's why this kind of news usually comes out to make headlines, right? So obviously, in this specific news article, analyst Jim Bianco says Bitcoin adoption narratives is not working. It needs new teams. It needs new teams. Okay, so I think it's not good because especially for new entrants, people looking to invest into Bitcoin, it's going to scare them away, right? And it matters because it highlights how markets are comparing Bitcoin to old school asset like gold, especially now with everyone buzzing at the World Economic Forums in Davos for Davos 2026, right? And obviously, President Trump spoke there emphasizing Bitcoin and crypto's importance, saying he's working to make America the crypto capital of the world by signing the Genius Act last year and pushing a new crypto market structure, crypto clarity bill law soon to unlock financial freedom, right? But of course, experts debate if Bitcoin needs fresh themes beyond adoption like nation-state reserve, more countries holding Bitcoin like US might, integration with AI for smarter trading, or green mixing to fix environmental concern, right? Because everyone always talk about Bitcoin, the use of energy to mine Bitcoin, right? So to be honest, we don't need new narratives. Bitcoin itself is the narratives that replace the traditional finance, simple, right? So these are the kind of awareness that are, that are taking a lot of mind share away from investors at present from Bitcoin. Okay, and other interesting news. Okay, they should. Oh yeah, let me play this. I think this is quite a good one because we all spoke about clarity bill, right? This is an important one, right? Because previously, I think last week, was it last week? Yeah, it was last week. And I somehow felt, having Trump coming out to specifically give some sort of endorsement, it's very, very important. And it will simply means Bitcoin hit or break in the coming few weeks, right? So Coinbase, I think 2 weeks ago or last week, pulls the plug on crypto clarity bill, right? But of course, Trump continue to push for this for quick signing. Okay, so background, the Clarity Act, officially the Digital Asset Market Clarity Act of 2025, is a big US bill aimed at setting clear rules for cryptocurrencies, like deciding if they're securities, which essentially means they'll be regulated by the SEC, or commodities regulated by the CFTC, and how they transition as a network grow decentralized, right? So this means finally having some sort of guidelines on trading, stablecoin, DeFi, and tokenized asset like digital versions of stocks or real estates, which I think the CEO of BlackRock is definitely trying to push more tokenization on more of the traditional equities like stocks and shares that can eventually one day be traded 24/7. And of course, hang on. And of course, I think the Coinbase CEO, right? You guys remember this? The Coinbase CEO, Brian Armstrong, he pulled support on January the 14th, calling the draft materially worse than a status quo draft, right? Materially worse than a status quo, like better even not to have a draft, right? Because it could ban tokenized equities, hurt DeFi privacy, shift powers to bank and SEC, right? And block platform like Coinbase from sharing stablecoin yields with users, right? So, of course, this led to Senate banking committee postponing a key markup vote hours later, right? So, despite all of this happened, President Trump said at Davos on January, I think 21st, 22nd, he hopes to sign it very soon, with White House advisor David Sachs noting they're closer than ever in signing that. So I think let's quickly hear this.
To unleash innovation in savings and financing, I'm also working to ensure America remains the crypto capital of the world. And to that end, last year I signed the landmark Genius Act into law. Now Congress is working very hard on crypto market structure legislation, Bitcoin, all of them, which I hope to sign very soon, unlocking new pathways for Americans to reach financial freedom. And I did it for two reasons. Number one, I thought it was politically good, and it was. I got tremendous political support. But more importantly, China wanted that market too. It's just like they want the AI. And we've got that market, I think, pretty well locked up. If I didn't do it, Biden was totally against it until before the election, when they realized that, there were millions of people voting against him over crypto. And all of a sudden they loved it very much, but it was too late. They blew it. But it is politically popular, but it's much more importantly, we have to make it so that China doesn't get the hold of it. And once they have that hold, we're not going to be able to get it back.
Okay, so the Senate Agriculture Committee released its drafts on January 21st, with a hearing set for 27th of 2026. So full Senate vote could follow in late February or March, all depends on whether they'll need to modify it more. Then to Trump potentially by Q1, and if no big delays, so maybe end of March or April, right? So currently it's kind of like a mixed sentiments. Industry key leader like Coinbase, of course, they pull back, causing caution and debate, but Trump's optimism kind of brings back some hope into Bitcoin, right? Into like try not to derail the progress that the banks, the traditional finance are trying to do so. Okay. Yeah, I think, to be honest, I think Trump pretty much hate the traditional finance too. I think recently he's trying to sue was it Morgan Stanley for something about not giving him access to banks. Yeah, so just crazy stuff going on with Trump. Anyway, last thing. Oh, another thing that I want to cover is some progress with more state-owned strategic Bitcoin reserve. So Kansas introduced a bill to create a strategic Bitcoin reserve. Kansas state lawmakers, led by Senator Craig Bowser, introduced Senate Bill 352 on January 21st or 22nd to set up a special Bitcoin and digital asset reserve funds managed by the state treasurer. So a strategic reserve is like state's saving pot for valuable asset. In this case, it will be Bitcoin and other digital currency instead of just selling them off quickly, right? So the bill, of course, updates Kansas' old unclaimed property laws, right? Rules for handling forgotten or abandoned stuff like bank accounts or crypto wallets, so that any unclaimed digital assets like lost Bitcoin go to the state after 3 years of inactivity. So again, the government, the people in power, in control, they're always constantly coming after your Bitcoin, right? Even when one day you've forgotten about it, even one day you kind of pass away, right? And your kids or children or grandchildren cannot get forgotten about it. So that's when the government will want to come in and snatch up, gobbles up all of your Bitcoin and crypto. So be careful with that and make sure you do have, you can continuously pass on such wealth. And you can do so only through education, right? Educate your wife and kids, your grandkids, when they're matured enough, of course, about the importance about self-sovereignty, self-custody, how blockchain works, how Bitcoin works, how money works, right? So these are the things that, you need to bear that in mind and educate your family about this, okay? And of course, they will take it, and then the state can hold them long term in these reserve funds, so that the state, Kansas, can earn staking rewards like extra crypto from locking up assets. They can claim the airdrops or collect some interest, right? These are like incomes for the government, right? So bear that in mind. If you don't protect your wealth, if you don't correctly manage all of your digital assets, someone will take that away from you. Okay. I think from a Bitcoin holder's perspective, I think these are all good news too, because if more states do this, it creates real demand for Bitcoin and digital assets and crypto. And government buying or holding Bitcoin means less supply on the market and more stability too. Okay, so I think these are very exciting news. Okay, and of course, there will always be some non-exciting news that I need to cover and make you guys aware of. So Netherlands, they are to tax unrealized crypto gains at 36% starting 2028. So the Netherlands is set to introduce a major tax reform starting in 2028, where unrealized gains on cryptocurrencies like Bitcoin, meaning profits on paper even if you haven't sold, will be taxed annually at a flat rate of 36% under the new box tree system. Okay, shifting from assumed returns to actual value changes in assets, including stocks and bonds. So not just crypto, but also stocks and bonds, right? This could lead to higher tax bills for holders, potentially forcing early sales in volatile market to essentially cover costs, right? So it will discourage long-term investment and sparking capital flight as people moves assets abroad for better tax treatment. So not good for a country's growth, I would say. Dutch crypto enthusiasts are reacting strongly against it on social media, calling it punishing for simply holding and the worst tax system of all time that crushes innovations, with fears of reduced liquidity and market dumps. Okay, so for Bitcoin holders, this could mean higher costs and less incentives to hodl, like hold your Bitcoin for a longer period of time, especially in a volatile market where gains fluctuate wildly, resulting some of the holders having to sell early. So that's not good. So if you're holding, it might push you to relocate asset or sell early or to rebalance, right? And you might want to restrict the growth. So it all comes down to once institution starts to adopt or central governance trying to introduce new laws and regulations, regulatory rules onto Bitcoin and crypto, it's all going to suppress the Bitcoin. I've made a video recently where I pondered, why Bitcoin it's so different this cycle versus the previous one, because all of this will have an effect on people. Might want to rebalance, people might want to sell early so that they don't have to pay too much tax and so forth, right? And it will suppress the Bitcoin price from gaining to an all-time high, right? Like previously, retail investors, we all wait until Bitcoin gets to its all-time high, then all of a sudden we sell off, right? So institutions and all of these new tax rules will prevent Bitcoin price from going to its all-time high. That's my speculation, by the way. Do your own research, not financial advice. So the best advice that I'm giving you and everyone is stick with Bitcoin, stick with it for long, but don't stick with Bitcoin if you want to earn quick bucks, right? If you want to bank with Bitcoin for a longer period of time, which I personally think is so important for all of us to have exposure into Bitcoin at the early start of this phase, is essentially because everyone will eventually have exposure onto Bitcoin anyway, right? Anyone will have exposure to Bitcoin eventually, right? And you might as well just start now, as Bitcoin price is still very, very affordable. Maybe later on, no one can actually afford any Bitcoin. They can afford sats, a tiny, tiny portion amount of Bitcoin. And of course, I hope that this will not come into the UK anytime soon. Britain taxes only on realized gains so far. And post-Brexit, I think somehow, we kind of avoided some of that EU harmonization. So while Europe might discuss similar ideas on taxing unrealized gains, hopefully it won't come into the UK anytime soon. Unless we're still with the Labour government. But hopefully we won't be with the Labour government in 2 years' time. I don't know. You never know, right? Overall, for the past 24 hours, I think Bitcoin dip. Not much catalyst so far. I mean, although Trump, you heard him, he came out on Davos, spoke about importance of Bitcoin. Well, he didn't say specifically Bitcoin, but importance of getting the bills going, which I think it's insufficient to bring the Bitcoin price up further, but we'll see as we are drawing nearer and closer to the FOMC meeting. I think that would be next week, right? 27th, 28th. Yeah, that will be next week, guys. We shall see how that goes. Other than that, thanks for watching, guys. Please hit the like, hit subscribe, and let me know who you are in the comment section. And I'll see you in the next video. Have a great weekend, guys. Speak to you soon. Bye bye.